So is there something people haven't ranked already? Okay, so let's rank all the tags in Terraforming Mars. A few ground rules. I'll be ranking the tags based only on their value and know how good the average card of that tag is. And I'll be including the expansions, but maybe assigning a little less weight to it and a little more weight to the base game. Okay, so let's begin. The worst tag, well, we have no tag here. So the worst tag is no tag. And there's only one card that really uses the no tag cards, and it's community services. It's a decent card actually, but it's only one, so yeah, that's the worst one. The second worst, city tag, and I want you to go there. So the city tag is actually not used once in any card in the whole game, prelude, corporation, project, event, or anything. There are quite a few cards that actually mention or depend on the number of cities on Mars or in play, but it's city tiles, not city tags. So yeah, it's only relevant for Aridor, Diversifier, and Interplanetary Trade. And that's actually enough to make it better than no tag. But yeah, it's that's the only way it's used, so second worst. Third worst, I went with energy. So there are 3 cards that use the energy tag, and it's Power Supply Consortium and Fusion Power need 2 tag as requirements, and Power Grid gives you energy production for each energy tag. Now all these cards can be efficient. In the case of Power Grid, you probably need at least 3 other tags, so you get at least 4 production, which makes it more efficient than Giant Space Mirror. But the problem is that these cards are rarely used because you wouldn't keep them early in case you don't get the energy tags, and late you may not need the energy production. So it's really not a very useful tag. It's better than the city. I mean, it still helps with Aridor, Diversifier, and Interplanetary Trade. But despite the cards being decent, they're very niche. If you're Thorgate, they're really good because you can do an energy strategy, and they do get better with colonies, especially if you get additional trade ships, because then you might need 6 power production, so that's good, or with something like Physics Complex, but otherwise they're really almost unused. Oh, and I guess it also shows up on one global event in Turmoil, Improved Energy Templates, which gives you 1 energy production for every 2 tags plus influence, which is actually really nice, because you don't have to pay anything for events, and you can plan to play your power-hungry cards undetermined this event's gonna happen. However, events are really random, and also most tags get 1 event at least, so it wouldn't bump it up anywhere. But I actually quite like that event. Right, up next, 1 full tier up, the event tag. Now, there is a significant difference to me between C and D tier, and the reason the event tag makes that jump, it's because of the legend milestone. And claiming a milestone is more than enough to leave D tier in my opinion. Now you could argue that the milestone is for the type of card, the red cards, and instead of the tag, because the other milestone in that map, Tycoon, requires blue and green cards, and Legend requires the red cards, but all red cards are events, and all events are red cards, so I think it's the same thing basically, so I'll give it credit for that. And if not, it would go here anyway, top of D instead of bottom of C. But I am gonna count it and put it in bottom of C. Now, beyond the Legend event, it shows up in the bonus of Interplanetary Cinematics, Media Group, and Optimal Air Braking. Now, these 3 together are actually kind of OP. I rarely see it though. People usually block it. Just if you have IC and Media Group, most people want to play anyway. It's a really good card. Optimal Air Braking not so much, because it does have to be a space event and those are expensive, so the percentage discount is not that great. And it also shows up in Media Archives, which is a really nice last turn card. It usually gets you between 5 and 10 mega credits. If you're 4 or 5 player, it can get you more, but that often means 1 or 2 victory points, or maybe even the difference between claiming the last award and not claiming it, so it's often really significant. And finally, it's on a global event. Celebrity Leaders gives you 2 mega credits for event tag plus influence. Now this is only your event tags, not the game's event tags, which is not too significant. So I think C tier is fine for this one. Next up, the Microbe tag. Now this is another underwhelming tab. Despite the fact that it seems like it should be better, the main reason it makes the jump is again Ecologist, which is the milestone that requires the plant, animal, or microbe tags. And then it shows up in the greens the greens bonus, and in a number of pretty good cards like Advanced Ecosystems, Viral Enhancers, and then it's also on Decomposer and GMO contract, so that's enough to bump it over event. And it's also on Worms, which I rarely play. You need 4 microbe tags to make that worth it. Well, 3 plus Worms. And Search for Life, which can actually be nice, but it's because of the science tag more than anything, and it looks for microbe cards in the unplayed cards deck, so I can hardly count that. Okay, and rounding up C tier, the Venus tag. Now, right after Venus Next came out, I probably would have ranked this higher, because it was in a higher percentage of cards. It's still in a lot of cards. It's in 32 cards. The Venus expansion are at 49, and the Venus tag is in 32, which is quite high. But it did get diluted. It didn't show up in Colonies, Preludes, or Turmoil. It does show up in Turmoil in the Unity bonus, but it doesn't show up in any cards. And then it didn't show up not just in the Prelude prayer cards, but also in any of the Preludes. So there's no synergy there, and Preludes are really powerful. So yeah, that's why it's lower on C tier. Now, it does show up on an award, and it's arguably the best award, because it's in every map. Technically, if you play with the Venus expansion, you're supposed to add the Venophile award as a 6th award. So it's the award that's in every map, and that's significant. Other than that, like I said, it's in the Unity bonus. And then in the Venus expansion, it's actually quite a heavy theme. It's in a couple of good economic development cards like Dirigibles and Venus Way Station. It gives you 1 MC production for each tag in Gyropolis and Sulfur Experts. It's a requirement for Sister Planet Support and Venus Governor, which are pretty cheap early development cards. And then it's not technically a requirement, but it does show up in IO Sulfur Research, and I would argue, I mean, you can play these without Venus tags, but it's so much better with the 3 Venus tags that it's almost only worth to play like that unless you have Jovian. And then it's on the 4 Unity theme cards, the Mining Quota, Luxury Food, SolarNet, and Omnicourt. Mining Quota is really good. If you can play this early because you get the tags early, and the hard one's going to be the Jovian one, not the Venus one. This is a great development card. The other 3 are decent. Not great, but decent. And finally, the Venus expansion added a new mechanic where you can only add resources to cards with Venus tags on it, which was later done in Colonies with Jovian. But this actually makes the Venus tag way stronger because, well, there's the floater cards like Stratopolis, Hydrogen to Venus, and Air Scraping Expedition. There's the Inner Resource cards, Maxwell Base and Corroder Suits, and there's also Animals and Microbes, and Venus actually added some decent Animals and Microbes, so these cards are actually quite relevant. That being said, however, I can't rank it any higher because it only shows up in 1 expansion, and people often play without that expansion, so people forget about this tag altogether sometimes. So it's top of C tier. Alright, moving on to B tier, the Animal tag. Now, I thought I would have had the animal tag higher because it's a theme in the few animal cards that there are, but there's just not enough. There's only 16 animal cards, so I can't rank it any higher. The other reason is that it does show up in a milestone, Ecologist, but it's the least relevant tag in that milestone because animals come really late, with the exception of pets, Arclight, the corporation, and maybe an early ecological zone. I usually claim that award with just 3 or 4 plant tags and a microbe tag. And the same thing goes for the greens bonus. That bonus, the bonus in the parties are all better early in the game. So you might play a couple of animal tags late in the game, and that'll net you a total of 5 or 6 points in the last 2 gens if you get them in power, but otherwise they might not do anything on that bonus. So in that sense, the microbe tag is better. However, where the animal tag is much better is in some of the same cards that made the microbe tag decent, like viral enhancers. Viral enhancers, if you have it in play, playing an animal tag almost guarantees you a point, an extra point. Whereas with the microbe tag, it doesn't. It's a third or a half a point. So with all the 1 point animals, viral enhancers, it's the main reason to me why viral enhancers is a great card. That any animals you play give you an extra point. Decomposers, GMO contract, and advanced ecosystems, it has the same weight as the microbe tag, and in this case it doesn't matter that you play them late. And then there's ecological zone and arclight is the other reason why the animal tag is this high. Ecological zone is one of my favorite cards, and arclight is one of my favorite corps. It's not the best. It's favorite because it's fun, but yeah, both arclight and ecological zone can net you 6 points in a game, which is amazing. And it's because the animal in plant tag, but the animal is half of that, right? So I rank it a little higher than microbe and higher than Venus, but there's just not a lot else it does, and it's actually weaker with the milestone and the greens. So yeah, B tier. Okay, so next in B tier, most of the tags we've seen so far are good when they're on the table. The space tag, next tag, is quite different because it's good when it's in your hand. So first of all, obviously you can use titanium to pay for it, which I'm counting that for this ranking, otherwise it could be lower. And then the other thing is that there are like a lot of discounts. Most of the discounts in the game are for space tags. So you have space station, shuttles, mass converter, and quantum extractor in the base game. And then warp drive, which is a -4 discount in colonies, which is a pretty good card. So space tags are very good in your hand. Once they get to the table, they are not that great. The only places where it matters is the satellites, which is can actually be really good, but it's only 1 card. Optimal air braking, which you need it to be an event, and then there's the Space Baron Award. So it's definitely relevant. I just find that if you don't go for titanium, it doesn't matter too much. Yeah, and then there are a few other cards like Advanced Alloys and Mercurian Alloys and the Unity bonus and Phobolog that actually make titanium more valuable, so that does make this tag a little stronger. It shows up in a couple of events, one's positive and one's negative, so that kind of evens out. And finally, it's in self-replicating robots, which is a weird card, but it's actually pretty good. And closing out B tier, Space's Cousin, Building. So, like the space tag, the building tag is pretty good in your hand, because you can pay it with steel, which is a little less efficient than titanium, but still pretty good. And then it also shows up in a discount, Terraforming Mars, but I'm barely counting this because it's only 1 corp. So space is actually much better in your hand because you can get up to 14 in discount. But the thing is, Builder is much better on the board. The main reason it's better on the board is the Builder milestone. The Builder milestone, in my opinion, is the best milestone. And what I mean by this is that this is the milestone that I see go off earlier most of the time in the original board. And it's also the milestone that you can claim without having to invest heavily outside of your plan. And I'll explain this in more detail when I do a video breaking down each milestone. But this is the best milestone. You'll often see players go for it when they don't have a clear path to another milestone, and it barely hurts their game long term. It also shows up in Contractors, so that kind of evens out with Space Baron. And then the other thing is it does show up in a couple of good production cards. Robotic Workforce lets you copy the production of another card with a building tag, and most of the good production cards have building tags, and doubling something like Strip Mine can be insane, even if you have to pay the energy again. And then it shows up in MedLab in Parliament Hall, and those cards give you 1 MC production for every 2 or 3 tags. MedLab is usually what I use as my 8th tag to claim the Builder Award. But the other thing that really makes it very strong in my opinion is the Mars Fist bonus. The Mars First bonus is the best bonus in Turmoil in my opinion, and that's because the Builder tags come very early compared to the other tags, except maybe Earth. But there's way more building tags than Earth. So you're gonna get more MC because the tags are gonna be there all game basically than with the other bonuses. Aside from that, alloys and Regal plastics also makes steel stronger, which is relevant, and it shows up in self-replicating robots, but I think that card actually helps more space tags because of the heavy price of space tags and the fact that you play them later so you can actually replicate more. And finally, it did get a little nerf with the events. It shows up in 3, and it's pretty negative in 2 of them, so there's Heat First Election and Pandemic, and they do take money from you because of your tags. But still, because of, I would say Builder and Mars First are the main reasons that I would rank this higher than the space tag. Alright, so 5 tags left, and we're moving on to A tier. The bottom of A tier we have the plant tag. Now the plant tag, I was surprised to discover that it's really in very few cards, but they're all amazing. It's in the Ecologist milestone, and the Ecologist milestone is really mostly played by plant tags, like I said before. So I will give the plant tag more credit for this than the animal or microbe, because you're usually going to use 3 or 4 plant tags to pay for this. And then same with the greens. All the bonuses are better early, and most of the tags that you're going to have that fit this bonus are plant tags early. So it's the one that's going to net you more MC. Beyond that, it's in all the same green themed cards that the animal and microbe are that I already talked about. So it's in Decomposers, DMO Contract, Viral Enhancers, Advanced Ecosystem. And it's actually a little weaker in Viral Enhancers. It only nets you a plant instead of an animal, which is a full point. But then it's also in Arclight and in Ecological Zone, and it's as valuable as the animal in those two, except there are more plant tags. So might actually net you a few more points than the animal tag in that case. And finally, the main reason why it jumps so high is Insects and Nitrogen Rich Asteroid. These are 2 insanely good production cards, plant production cards, that with early plant tags can come down early and break the game. NRA, obviously you never play without 3 plant tags, so it's gonna give you 4 production, and Insects, you gotta wait for 6% oxygen anyway, and I usually hit this with between 3 and 6 tags, and it nets you so many points. Finally, there's Psychrophiles, which lets you pay for plant tags a bit cheaper. This is less relevant, but still, I think it does make the plant tag a bit better. Okay, continuing with the A tier, I think there's a tag in this group that we can all tell is the weakest, and it's the Earth tag. Now, I could see an argument for the Earth tag being ranked below the plant tag and even the building tag, and it might be because of my play strategy. I really like the MC engine building, just because it's so flexible and I like the longer games. So it could be weaker, but yeah, I think it can actually be really strong, and it's the most versatile strategy. In the base game, it doesn't show up that often. It's obviously Interactor and Earth Office, so you can do Super Interactor and get your 60 discount. Both of those, that's a really strong corp and a really strong card. And then it's also in Cartel and Miranda Resort. I've seen some crazy Cartel plays where you get 5 MC production in the first or second gen. It can be really strong. Where it really shines though is with the Colonies expansion. It actually shows up as a requirement in a lot of cards, a lot of good cards. And then also as a multiplier in income again. So Lunar Mining, you get a titanium production for every 2 tags, which is amazing. And it's a cheap card actually, only 11. And considering how early Earth tags can come, this makes it even better. And then there's Luna Governor and Heavy Taxation, great development cards, early development cards. They have 2 and 3 requirements on the tax. And then Skyduck's probably my favorite card in that set. It gives you an additional trade fleet, 2 victory points, and a discount. I think it's insane, this card, how good it is. And it requires 2 Earth Tax, and then Conscription a little weaker. But it does let you play some bigger cards. If you're in with one of the poorer corps, it's really nice. It does require the 2 Earth Tax again. And finally, Martian Zoo. Martian Zoo, the problem is the 2 cities that it requires. But if there happens to be a Tharsis on the board, or it's a 3 or 4 player game and the 2 cities are there, it's amazing because it's like a cartel that keeps growing after you play it. So basically you play it and then you keep getting the tax, and that gives you 1 MC more. So it's basically like you keep increasing your production after you play this. On the downside, not before. So it does have to come in early. It's not very featured in the Turmoil expansion, except it's a bigger part of the Unity bonus. It shows up in PR Office, but it only nets you some mega credits. That's an okay card. And Saturn Surfing, which I really don't like, so that doesn't really bump it at all. Finally, the Prelude expansion was really nice for it. The 2 best preludes are Earth Tax, and then Point Luna. I think it's the second best corp in that set, but that set has really strong corps. So Vitor is maybe a little stronger, but I love Point Luna, and every Earth Tax draws you a card, which is one of my favorite bonuses of all the corps. And then it also added Space Hotels, which is another great production card that has a 2 tag requirement. So very good again. Finally, Venus added some cards that use it as a requirement, but I really like the multiplier cards. Luna Metropolis and Gyropolis can both give you insane production. And then, same as with Venus, Sister Planet support and the 4 Unity cards. I already talked about it. Mining Quota is the best. And then it's in 1 event tag. 1 global event card. Other than that, it's usually just the tag that gives you mega credits, and that's why I like it so much. Okay, I debated whether to put the next tag at the top of A or the bottom of S, and I decided, even though I really like it, it's closer to Earth. That what comes above, spoiler alert, they're both S tier, but Jovian tag A tier. Now there are 4 big reasons why the Jovian tag is so high, and those are the 4 Jovian multipliers, which it's just the most insane source of points late in the game. If you have 2 multipliers and 3 other cards, that's 10 points, plus the points on each card. And that's not that rare for a Jovian strategy. The player can grab those in the draft before even playing the first card and start to get blocked. So yeah, the multipliers are the reason it's there. However, once Colonies came out, that made the Jovian tag a lot better. There are 4 cards that only add resources to Jovian tags, and I quite like 2 of them. Titan Floating Launchpad is pretty good. Titan Shoals is okay. Jupiter Floating Station is nice, and Nitrogen from Titan is also nice. Nitrogen from Titan can easily net you 4 points as well. So that actually made the tag a bit stronger, just like Venus did for the Venus tag, obviously. It also shows up at requirement in Jovian Lanterns and from the base set in Beam from a Thorium Asteroid. I'm not the biggest fan of either of those cards. The Jovian Lanterns does have a 1-to-2 ratio, but it can be a bit expensive. And then it does give you production with Galilean Way Station. It gives you money directly with Diaspora Movement, and you get a bunch of floaters on Venus tags per Jovian tag with Hydrogen to Venus. That's kind of a weird card because it's in the Venus set, but it's fine. Other than that, it shows up in 2 events, 1 positive, 1 negative, when you lose titanium, when you gain titanium, so it kind of evens out. And it's part of the Unity bonus. However, it's not going to be the biggest part of that. There are many Jovian cards, I think 24 in the whole game, and they come in late. Saturn Systems benefits for it, and Rim Settler is another reason why I have it so high. You only need 3 tags to claim this milestone, and it's completely worth playing a expensive Jovian tag in order to claim it. They can be a little hard to get if you're playing with the expansions that dilute the tag a little. But it's still three tags for a whole milestone is pretty nice. You can get one in the preludes, and yeah, play a production card earlier, and you're pretty close at that point. Finally, also shows up in the 4 Unity cards that I've discussed already. To summarize, 4 multipliers, Rim Settler, and the floater cards are the main reason is this eye. It's almost S tier, but not quite. So the one that did make it into S tier, and let's just, I guess, move them both there. This is the right order. Science. So the science tag, most of the tags we've seen, they're either good in your hand or good on the table because they can let you, they have accumulative effects, but the science tag is here because it's a restriction on some of the best cards in the game. Just to name a few, AI Central, in my opinion, the best card in the game, requires 3. Anti-gravity technology. It's not the best card in the game only because of the high requirement in science tags, which makes the science tag really strong. It requires 7. Like, if this card had no requirements, it would be the best card in the game. So it only means science is stronger. Then you have Mass Converter and Quantum Extractor. Warp Drive, Interstellar Colony Ship, Down City, and Atmoscoop all require science tags, and all of these cards are amazing in my opinion. Additionally, Olympus Conference and Mars University, they're fueled by science tags, and these are 2 very good draw engines, so they go really well with the strategy. The science tag is so good that research is, like, I don't even care about the cards when I play research, I care about the 2 tags. It's also the bonus for the scientists, and it's in the Scientist Award. The Scientist Award is actually pretty relevant. Often when you go science strategy, this is the only available award in that map, so the Scientist Award is really important. And then it has the discount in Valid Trust. I almost don't care about that. But finally, there's a number of good, mediocre, and bad cards that also have the science requirements. Just to name a few: Gene Repair, Plantation, Lightning Harvest, Tectonic Stress Power, Red Pole Observatory, Floating Half, Stratopolis, Atalanta Planitia, Extremophiles, Jupiter Flow Illustration, and the Mercurian Alloys, Orbital Cleanup, Dusk Laser Mining, Corona Extractor. There's just so many cards that require science. The main reason it's this high is because it's required in AI Central, Anti-Grav, and the other ones I mentioned at the beginning of the science bit. But yeah, this is the stronger tag. And just to round up the tier list, the wild tag. Now there's only 3 wild tags in the game. 1 in the Septentrivus Corporation, 1 in a Prelude, and in the card that its whole purpose is to have a wild tag. And I was debating whether this card would be worth it if it had another tag instead of the wild card, and I would pay 4 for a science tag and nothing else. Maybe a Jovian, anything else would not be worth it, but yeah, the wild tag is so good that it's on a card that only has the tag and it does nothing else. And just to summarize what it does, because it doesn't do everything, it only counts when you play an action, but yeah, it does the same thing as science in terms of enabling all the cards I mentioned, which is the strongest part of the science tag. It doesn't fuel Olympus and Mars U, but it does enable any requirements. For the Jovians, it only counts for Terraforming Ganymede and on the requirement ones. So it actually doesn't overlap at all with the Jovians, but it's still like almost strictly better than the science one. Then it multiplies your income with all the other Earth production cards, and it counts in all the Earth requirements. It fuels NRA, it fuels insects. It helps you claim all the milestones. It doesn't help you with any of the awards. So it helps with Builder, Ecologist, Diversifier, and Rim Settler, but it doesn't help with the awards. And so, well, that's it. That's why the wild tag is so good. It does almost everything the science tag does, which is the 2nd place, and then some of the best thing that the earth tag, building tag, plant tag do. I hope you like my rank. Please leave me your thoughts on the comments, subscribe, like, you know the drill, and see you next time.